Hello, everyone. My name is Jack O'Leary. I'm an analyst at Planet Retail RNG, and thank you for tuning in today to join us for our webinar on one of our newest capability reports published last week, Winning with Third-Party Marketplaces. I am an e-commerce analyst here at Planet Retail RNG, covering topics in digital innovation, e-commerce marketplaces, digital ecosystems, and helping us with our future content coverage of the future of digital retail. Just a few reminders for the webinar. Please do utilize the webinar question and answer tool that you have in your GoToWebinar system. At the end of the call, I will leave a few minutes for questions for everyone on this topic. But with that, we have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Just to lay out kind of where this piece of content that we published last week in this thinking fits within our greater content strategy and research. Some of you on the call may be familiar, some may not, but we have this concept known as STEEP, and it is the drivers of change that are affecting retail. We frame these drivers through this acronym in terms of bucketing them for what is really going to push and affect retail long term. Those buckets are society, technology, economy, industry, and policy. And understanding things like age demographics or shrinking attention spans or new regulatory and political changes, whether it be tariffs or cross-border regulations, industry dynamics, and new trends within the retail industry alone. All of this helps us form a set of assumptions that are really relevant to what's going to drive strategic decision-making for retailers and suppliers that sell into retail long-term, determining the future of what is digital retail. And that leads us to what we've come up with as our 4 winning strategies. And these winning strategies are store of the future, shopper engagement and retention, supply chain fulfillment, and e-commerce and digital ecosystem management. We are really focused on figuring out and writing about and working on the future of digital retail, whether that be in an omni-channel environment or a pure play e-commerce environment. And these 4 winning strategies, determined through the framework of STEEP and the drivers of change that come out of STEEP, are what we feel are the key elements of the future of retail, what's going to drive retail growth going forward. Within e-commerce and digital ecosystem management, we've determined a number of what are key capabilities for success within that winning strategy. And that gets us to what this report really is. This report is what we're calling a capability report, one of a series that are going to outline what suppliers, CPG brands, and retailers really need to be thinking about to best position themselves to win in this future digital retail environment where these e-commerce platforms, these digital ecosystems are driving the majority of retail sales growth going forward. What capabilities need to be developed internally at organizations, what items and factors need to be considered. There's a number of items on this list, but today's webinar and the report, Winning with 3P Marketplaces, is focused on this one key aspect of that. So now that we've kind of set the landscape for how we're thinking about the future of retail, our greater content strategy here at Planet Retail RNG, let's talk about why winning with 3P marketplaces is so critical to make our list of capability reports that define the e-commerce and digital ecosystem winning strategy. So using our database, it becomes fairly evident that 3P marketplaces are the driving factor that is resulting in these e-commerce sales figures that are really transforming retail and driving the future of sales growth, retail scale, a bunch of different factors here. Looking at e-commerce, yes, e-commerce is going to drive 46% of sales added across formal chain retail around the world through 2022. But when we dive deeper and look at the different e-commerce business models that operate, the 3P marketplace e-commerce business model is driving 30% of global chain retail sales added through that year. This is the singular online business model that is aggregating the most sales and scale long term, and is really what drives the trend that everyone is talking about with e-commerce transforming the digital retail landscape of the future. But I think it's important to take a step back here, and I'm talking about these retail e-commerce business models. What exactly is a 3P marketplace, a third-party marketplace at its most simple element? And so to us, a third-party marketplace is simply a platform that aggregates sellers and shoppers in a singular location. It offers a dynamic way for shoppers to go and browse nearly endless aisle assortment. The way that these marketplaces drive that massive assortment depth and breadth is by not actually owning inventory themselves, but simply being an online storefront that allows for browsing and transactions, and sometimes much more than that for shoppers, by allowing independent third-party sellers to list items on their platforms. At its most simple, a 3P marketplace is just a large catalog with vast assortment for shoppers and inventory that does not have to be owned and operated and sold by the marketplace platform itself, like in a traditional retail or relationship or environment. So what drives the success of this platform? Why is it so large? Why does it grow so quickly? Why is it so relevant? And there's this concept known as the flywheel, often popularized by Amazon, which is one of the most relevant and important 3P marketplaces around the world. And basically, this flywheel is a virtuous cycle that occurs on the most successful 3P marketplaces, all centered around this idea of scale and growth. So at its most simple, as I was saying, this endless assortment makes 3P marketplaces a one-stop shop for shoppers. It makes it highly convenient. This attracts tremendous viewership, aggregating shoppers, knowing that they're drawn to these platforms because it is a one-stop shop for them. They can search countless items in an intuitive manner, purchase them. It makes their online shopping experience as easy as possible. Now, that larger selection and better customer experience by being able to browse that selection makes the platform grow in sales volume, which also makes it more popular to the sellers that actually list and operate businesses on these platforms. That further perpetuates this assortment depth that we're seeing, which makes the platform more popular to shoppers. That cycle spins, the marketplace grows, it increases in scale, and the cycle starts over again. And additionally, on top of that layer, what ends up happening is these 3P sellers create a robust competitive pricing environment. All these sellers are making their own pricing decisions on all their individual items. Many are going up against one another on a variety of factors, whether it be customer service, but also price. The pricing environment becomes highly competitive, which again only benefits the consumer, drawing more of them to the platform. As the marketplace grows, it adds more services, it adds more aspects to its platform. It is able to use its scale to leverage economies of scale on things like if they want to offer delivery to their third-party sellers, if they want to launch their own first-party marketplace. The platform grows, its scale increases, and it can compete in a way that smaller players simply cannot. Outside of that layer of the flywheel, it continues to spin with, as scale increases, the platform starts to add new services, new product lines, new programs and offerings, ultra high speed delivery, guaranteed prices, new categories. All of these things are what we call ecosystem expansion and make the platform all the more desirable for the consumer to reach and makes the business model work all the more successfully. As the scale increases even more so, these platforms become some of the largest companies around the world and some of the most innovative companies around the world, investing some of the highest amounts of all publicly traded companies around the world in research and development, innovating on things like the future of fulfillment, what new product categories they should be working on. They become platforms that are going to determine the future of shopping, which makes them even more competitively disruptive and powerful in the future digital retail environment. This cycle spins and spins, and these platforms become larger and larger, basically virtuously growing in the long term through this flywheel concept. But it's also interesting to note that, yeah, I defined marketplaces simply as a platform that hosts sellers and connects them with buyers, but the most successful 3P marketplaces around the world are much more than that. They often operate a unique business model from any other platform around the world, have many different tiers to their business, whether that be business to business arms, whether that simply be store-based models. I think also it's interesting to note that some of the most successful 3P marketplace platforms around the world are only partially 3P. So Amazon, namely being one, operates as similar to many traditional retailers as a first-party retailer on their platform, meaning that they negotiate agreements with their suppliers. They take title on inventory, store their inventory, list it on their online platform, and then take orders, fulfill the inventory to the end consumer. They do this simultaneously while also hosting countless listings from 3P sellers around the world. Their business on a unit basis is slightly over half 3P sales. We expect that only to increase. But this is just to say that these platforms are not simply online catalogs, listing sites. Yes, at their most simple, that is what they are. But what makes them really successful is being able to be more active participants as retailers in their business and really launch initiatives and grow their platform long term. But now I want to get into, now that we have an understanding of what 3P marketplaces is, the nature of operating, working with, and winning on one of these platforms. So let's take it from the perspective of a supplier. A supplier, assuming they're dealing with what we'll call a hybrid platform, they have both that first-party business where the e-commerce player, say Amazon or JD.com in China, has a first-party retailing business and also hosts 3P listings. They have these three options really available to them in terms of working with and transacting with the platform. The first and most simple and traditional one is to simply be a first-party supplier, a seller to the platform. This is most similar to a traditional retail relationship. There's some definite advantages to it. It's most familiar to suppliers around the world. It also, because it has the support of the very well-established e-commerce business model in the marketplace, it supports higher sales volume at launch. The retailer takes all of the risk of owning or a major portion of the inventory housing risk, the warehousing, fulfillment considerations. There are some weaknesses though to this platform, which we'll get into a little bit later. But on many of these hybrid marketplaces, suppliers have found themselves subject to really difficult evaluations in terms of significant price pressure in a deflationary price environment, where the marketplace platform is evaluating all their individual items on a unit-by-unit profitability analysis. There's high potential for out of stocks due to the vast assortment a lot of these marketplaces have. Their warehousing capabilities are stretched to the limit almost at all times. It is a challenging environment to simply just be a supplier in. There is also an opportunity to anyone supplying a marketplace to consider being a 3P seller, listing on the sites themselves. There's a number of key factors that make that successful, which we'll get into. And then there's also the idea of being coordinated, doing both, understanding that there's benefits and limitations to being a 3P seller, and there's also benefits and limitations to being a first-party supplier, and being able to operate both of those simultaneously to really optimize on some of these hybrid marketplace platforms. So starting with the basics of just simply being a 1P vendor on a third-party marketplace platform like Amazon, yes, it tends to be a higher volume channel for a large-scaled supplier around the world. There's a level of control of content. You have a relationship with your vendor manager at Amazon who will, to some extent, work with you to help monitor and work on your product assortment on the platform. You also have greater access to some of the popular promotional and program opportunities. So Amazon, for example, or other retailers around the world have these really innovative programs that really resonate well with consumers. They're often focused on individual categories, things like rapid under 2-hour delivery. They'll launch these programs with their first-party suppliers, majority first, because it gives them an element of greater control. And then there's also this idea that suppliers won't have to develop very new capabilities that a 3P seller might have, things like delivery. As you can see, Suppliers who are really active in their first party relationship get access to some of these programs at the outset and can really benefit alongside the marketplace as these programs grow. They can be high investment propositions, but they can pay off in the long term. But I don't want to paint a picture of acting as a 1P vendor is the only way to go with one of these scaled hybrid marketplace platforms, these 3P marketplaces, because there are some limitations. Marketplaces are notoriously difficult for brands around the world. With all of these 3P sellers often outside your control, reselling your items, setting their own prices, you can have erosion of price perception for your brand. There's also a difficulty on many marketplaces of counterfeits being listed and sold, further eroding the perception shoppers have of your brand. There's a degree of difficulty with a lot of these 3P sellers simply taking the product content that you develop for your product listing pages and listing the items themselves and competing down a lot of the well thought out strategies and product presentation plans you have on the marketplace platform. It is a difficult environment in which to control your brand presence due to the amount of independent actors on it. So we argue that for many brands around the world, they should consider taking control of more of the levers available to them on a 3P marketplace platform. Namely, what I mean by that is considering as a supplier to a marketplace platform, moving to offer 3P listings of your own and operate as an independent 3P seller to some extent. There are 6 factors that we think you can benefit from if you move to this type of model, at least to some extent. And let's go through each individually. So the first I'll talk about is retailer margin access. This is granted a completely hypothetical scenario here, but because as a 3P seller, you set your own price versus the price of your items being set by the retailer. On a platform like Amazon, that price setting mechanism is done via an algorithm. Because you set your own price, you get the end price that the consumer pays for the item. Hypothetically, this could give you access to greater margin due to the final sale price and Amazon not being involved in the equation and taking any margin themselves. In reality, there aren't many suppliers that are actually achieving this. They aren't reaching the scale, throughput, and 3P kind of sophistication to do this. But in an ideal environment, when you are not selling to the retailer, Amazon, when you're selling to the end consumer, there's potentially access to greater margin, the retailer margin on a sale. There's also an issue with these 3P marketplaces from a 1P perspective, a first-party perspective for many suppliers. During periods of high volume, the warehouses at many of the largest marketplaces around the world are at capacity. Think about the holiday period. And what we've heard from many of our supplier clients is that Amazon and others consistently under forecast and under order their items around holiday period. When your items go out of stock, it can be very negative to your brand presence on a marketplace platform, affecting your performance on search results on some of these sites. It affects consumers' perception of your brand. This is something very much outside of the 1P supplier's control, given that Amazon is, from a vendor manager perspective, going to order the amount of inventory that they feel is necessary. So from a number of our supplier clients, we actually think it is a good idea to list as a 3P seller because it allows you to have your own inventory that can offer as a kind of buffer stock. So if the 1P inventory, if sales are over forecasts, you have 3P inventory in place, the same exact items that can support the robust sales growth you're seeing throughout the entire holiday period and prevent those critical out of stocks that are so negative for your business. 3P listings can also serve as one aspect in a test and learn product rollout plan. We see some business models out there that actually operate on this kind of escalation strategy where they begin a new product rollout, testing it with their most loyal consumers in probably one of the least appealing retail environments, their own branded online storefront. They'll start with a D2C environment, put a new product out there, raise awareness with their real brand loyal shoppers who are a little bit less price sensitive, a little bit less concerned about the convenience of fulfillment. Once they start to establish that presence and learn from those tests what items are going to resonate or not online with consumers, oftentimes before moving to some of the more established and formalized roles of selling online, another intermediary step is actually listing the items as 3P listings to start. So going to Amazon.com, listing these new products in a third-party manner allows you to build reviews, positive reviews, which will help when you actually launch as a 1P eventually for the item. Will also help you test further how the item performs on the marketplace platform. It also means that the items won't be evaluated by Amazon, the retailer. They'll simply just be hosted by Amazon, the marketplace. What that means is you lose the risk of Amazon simply delisting your items because the unit economics aren't working out. You set your own prices, so you don't have to be concerned about on the outset of a new product listing, the price is getting out of control. What will naturally happen as these items get sold more and more is that not only will your third-party listings be on the marketplace, but more likely 3P resellers will also be selling your items on the marketplace, creating a robust environment, further perpetuating those reviews, helping your items presence, raising product awareness. Your new product, after going through these initial steps of this kind of online product rollout, is now ready for first-party listings with higher throughput, greater scrutiny, more reliance on reviews. This escalation strategy can lower the risk of rolling out a new product online. A more simple element of listing as a 3P is you do become one input into that Amazon or other marketplace pricing machine. 3P sellers listings, if they win the buy box, which is an element of Amazon.com, the prices they set do influence what the first party listings price levels end up at. It is good in the difficult to control marketplace environment to at least have one input and set your own prices to some extent to try and influence your pricing presence for your brand on a platform. Finally, there's this idea of the future fulfillment and this idea that long-term many branded manufacturers might have to consider this idea that it might be most efficient to begin fulfilling items directly to the end consumer. Amazon, due to the capacity concerns of their warehousing and fulfillment centers, is actually pushing more suppliers to be able to either fulfill items themselves as a drop shipper or utilize more economically advantageous programs at Amazon as a 3P seller versus as a 1P supplier. What this simply means is Amazon wants visibility into all of the different inventory storage locations around a given market, and long-term wants to be the central coordinating point where shoppers are, yes, browsing inventory, browsing assortment, making purchases, but Amazon then has this visibility into all of the different warehouses, all the different supply chains of all of the interested players in the retail value chain, and is able to most efficiently fulfill items to shoppers based on where all these warehouses and where all this inventory is located. It also is just advantageous for branded manufacturers to start thinking about taking control of that consumer relationship long term and potentially developing delivery capabilities of individual eaches themselves, because it will give them a degree of control in this future e-commerce environment that they currently do not have. And finally, for markets that you do not currently have a great scaled or a large scaled presence in, a marketplace can offer you a simple, convenient channel to gain scaled access quickly. I think of Alibaba with their Tmall marketplace in China. Launching your items in Tmall storefronts, often through a local partner, can get you access to the massive Chinese consumer base, which has a large appetite for online buying and online buying of branded goods. These marketplaces also, in many of these markets, happen to be some of the most skillful retail environments around. Alibaba, for example, with their Tmall 3P marketplace platform, has an opportunity to utilize the massive data sets they have on all of their 500 million plus active users to do things like, if you look on the right side of this slide, offer a unique mobile storefront experience for a brand to a shopper based on if it is their first time going to your online storefront, their second time, or if they are a brand loyalist who visits all the time. This degree of shopper segmentation and shopper understanding is a real key advantage for these platforms. But let's now look at the retailers and what are their opportunities in this environment going forward. Retailers have several strategic options in the face of 3P marketplaces and their own 3P strategies. The first is do nothing, and this is more of a response to e-commerce in general than just 3P marketplaces. To offer an online platform that is non-differentiated, to not even get online. These marketplaces, the level of convenience they can offer consumers, the level of this assortment depth, the competitive prices, the reviews, this is simply not an option. Store-based retailers that don't acknowledge marketplaces presence will tend to struggle long-term and potentially have failures, get competed away. These marketplace platforms are just so convenient and attract so much viewership and shopper interest around the world that doing nothing does not appear like a great option in the face of this e-commerce growth. There are scaled retailers that do try to build their own marketplaces, launching 3P listings. The concern here is that it's a high level investment. You need to be a shopper online destination to begin with. Shoppers need to think of you as an everything store online. And you need to get that flywheel turning at the outset to start the virtuous cycle. And at this stage in the game, many retailers cannot achieve that. They will not be able to get the seller depth they need to really make themselves a desirable marketplace platform with competitive prices, deep assortment, things that draw consumers to them. Many struggling retailers have tried to simply just launch marketplace platforms without any selectivity. And that is not going to lead to successful results. There is an opportunity for a few of the largest retailers around the world to acquire some of these capabilities. Walmart has made a distinct investment and drawn a line in the sand in terms of they are going to launch a large 3P marketplace platform. They acquired Jet, which has 3P marketplace and 3P seller relationships, also e-commerce experience. Interestingly enough, the Walmart.com platform is actually going to be the central marketplace of Walmart in the future. Walmart has aggressively set their marketplace up to bring in as many sellers, This will make it a desirable platform, plus that Walmart branding and that Walmart retailer presence. All of that combined gives Walmart the unique opportunity to be an acquirer of a 3P marketplace and grow their own 3P marketplace, and perhaps be one of the scale platforms long-term that does see success through 3P strategies, despite not having a traditional e-commerce background. And finally, there's a level of partnership that retailers have available to them as well. You see a number of retailers around the world considering the dynamics of a new market, say China, and instead of opting to try and build out store-based operations there at high investment and high risk, or launch their own e-commerce platforms there, dealing with all of the issues surrounding that. Instead, they'll choose to partner with a large-scaled marketplace platform in the market and sell to consumers that way, which is another really good opportunity for retailers, as long as they consider the competitive risks of having a marketplace platform really controlling the consumer relationship. But I just want to quickly go into the marketplace model and the benefits it can provide to a retailer who currently doesn't have a marketplace. And there's three areas: long tail inventory support, market access, and it is a co-opetition channel. And let me explain those. So yes, I said that launching your own marketplace at scale is likely difficult for most traditional retailers at this stage in the game. But that isn't to say that 3P listings can't support your online business. If you have a differentiated online platform with unique inventory or a unique browsing experience, good online advice for shoppers, say you sell in a particular category and you have a really great branded presence there, and your online platform is a destination for shoppers, then you could consider selective 3P listings to further advance that shopper relationship, deepen the assortment in your category, list items that might be more difficult for you to fulfill, either due to their seasonal nature, whether they are large, bulky items that are difficult on e-commerce, whether they are items you want to simply test on your platform. So we see a number of retailers that operate kind of in this niche space, launching with 3P listings selectively, very much not to the knowledge of the end shopper, to deepen their assortment depth and help their online platform, simply supplementing their currently successful differentiated e-commerce business. this is an option to, I guess, partially become a 3P marketplace to help your online business model. Crate & Barrel is a great example here. They use 3P listings selectively to have, you know, highly expensive items like ultra premium coffee makers, seasonal items, branded items like technology products. This supports their image as a destination for items in the home and helps their greater business while they can focus on their mainstay home items, many of which are their own branded items, and don't have to worry about some of these items that are a little bit outside their traditional capability set. Additionally, we talked about partnership earlier. This is just a timeline of the various retailers that have launched storefronts on Tmall.com in China. And retailers, much like brands, can gain access to new marketplaces in a scaled manner that is more simple than setting up their own operations by setting up, you know, storefronts on some of these platforms. It's a testament to this strategy that Amazon.com, one of the most successful marketplaces around the world, has a Tmall storefront. Launched in March 2015 to access Chinese consumers at scale without building out their own businesses. So market access is another consideration retailers must have with these marketplace platforms. They can't provide that for them. And finally, I want to be, you know, very careful in talking about this item, but there's this idea of co-opetition. These marketplace platforms drive tremendous sales growth, tremendous sales throughput. They have some of the most innovative new technology shopping platforms, things like voice. They can be, for certain retailers, an avenue for new incremental growth, access to new shoppers through limited partnership. And we're starting to see more and more of this idea of co-opetition, where we see kind of strange bedfellows with retailers that have traditionally would compete with marketplace platforms selectively and thoughtfully partnering with them. Now, this isn't to say that you should give up on your e-commerce online business, the differentiated e-commerce online business you have, and simply just list on Amazon.com in a market that you currently operate in. That is not a recipe for success. But this is to say that there are a number of realities that you need to understand if you operate in a market with a company like Amazon, and you should take advantage of what they have. I love this example of Best Buy, a US consumer electronics retailer, and Amazon. Amazon has their Alexa skill system. It's voice activated smart speakers, and Best Buy has chosen to build an Alexa skill, knowing that the future of shopping is likely going to involve some element of voice ordering, and they want to start developing the capabilities around that to start. But this isn't to say that Best Buy has given up on competing with Amazon. There's actually Best Buy private label smart speakers that are utilizing not Alexa, but the Google Assistant, the Google Voice system to power their smart speaker aspects. So Best Buy is still very much, despite having its own Alexa skill, competing in one way or another with Amazon in some of the same categories. But then again, there's continued partnership. Amazon Alexa devices are really a popular product category right now. Are you going to limit that from your stores just because you compete with Amazon to some extent? Best Buy says no. They have Amazon Alexa devices displayed within their stores for sale. And then finally, you have to acknowledge that to some extent or another, it's out of your control that marketplaces are going to influence your retail business model. The final item on this slide is just a third-party listing of a private label tablet, a Best Buy private label tablet, listed by a 3P seller on Amazon.com. So a company like Best Buy has to acknowledge that Amazon is really relevant in the markets they play in, and they are going to have some level of interaction with them to some extent. They need to be thoughtful and selectively choose which ways they want to compete with Amazon and which ways that they want to take advantage of some of the platforms Amazon has set up for growth. Finally, let's look at some implications for suppliers and retailers, and we'll keep this at a decently high level. But I think there's an acknowledgement that 3P marketplaces are going to drive the majority of e-commerce sales growth long term. E-commerce is going to transform retail, bring on this future digital retail environment we're speaking about. So they're a critical growth channel, and they can't be ignored by suppliers or retailers long-term, either competitively or as an opportunity. For suppliers, they really must understand that despite everything all the options in front of them, their brand to some extent is likely going to end up on 3P marketplace platforms, and they need to make strategic decisions about how active a participant am I going to be in this platform? Am I going to, in a hybrid marketplace, be a supplier to an Amazon.com? Do I want to do 3P listings myself and access some of the benefits we talked about earlier on the call? Do I, at least to some extent, want to be consistently monitoring my brand presence to make sure that my pricing standards I'm understanding what's happening in my pricing standards on the marketplace, that there's not counterfeit items? Do I understand the 3P seller universe of my items? What are my resellers doing with my items? You need to be constantly monitoring and understanding your marketplace presence, because it's critical to your brand's perception to the end consumer, because so many consumers go to these marketplace platforms. Finally, suppliers, I think, should consider operating as a 3P seller on one of these platforms. It gives them so many more levers to pull on an Amazon.com than a simple 1P supplier relationship. Yes, there's extensive capabilities that come into play and a little bit more of an active participant role that comes with becoming a 3P seller. But for all the 6 factors I named earlier on this call, there is a number of benefits to considering at least some element of 3P selling as a supplier on a marketplace platform. And finally, I think 3P marketplaces need to be thoughtfully considered by retailers around the world. As much as they are a competitive threat, they can also be an opportunity. They're driving tremendous incremental growth, and I think that they can be an avenue for success long term if they are partnered with thoughtfully in this co-opetition world that we speak about right now. So with that, I just want to take questions, but also list my email address right here. Please do reach out to me if you have any questions about this call. This is being recorded, and the deck and the recording will be available on the RetailNet Group portal for anyone to access. But now let's see if we have any questions. All right. Is this inflation adjusted? So looking at some of our data. So for global data, we do constant currency long term. So it's pegged to a specific year and to USD. How do we position eBay? So eBay is an interesting model. So traditionally eBay, and they're working very hard to kind of change perception around this, has this perception of individual consumers selling to other consumers around the world, listing often used items, very difficult to confirm how verified authentic items are. eBay is working extremely hard to change that perception and be more of a traditional retail presence long term. I think that they might have some success going forward. They have a number of initiatives where items are verified as new. They're doing a bit of work around the pricing of items on their platform. But as things stand right now, eBay, I think, still has a bit of a way to go to kind of reach the perception that the best-in-class marketplaces around the world have, where shoppers do really view them as a retailer. And to some extent, when I shop Amazon.com as an average consumer in many of the marketplaces, I have some awareness if I'm buying from a 3P seller versus Amazon, but the way everything is branded and the experience I have there, it does very much feel like I'm shopping Amazon. I'm not shopping random seller X. eBay is working to kind of transition that perception to make themselves more mass, to have more mass appeal to more shoppers around the world that really want that kind of certification of authenticity of the retailer. Do we have any examples of suppliers successfully partnering with 3P reseller as a hybrid approach? So this is a good intermediary technique to listing as a 3P seller, because there's obviously a lot of concerns around everything from handling returns to customer service to managing your reviews to delivering items. So some suppliers will utilize programs at some of these marketplace platforms like Fulfillment by Amazon, where Amazon will handle all of your inventory for a fee and fulfill those to the consumer at the end, but you still operate as a 3P seller. But there is also a number of different what we'll call companies out there that operate as kind of 3P reselling partners. They can take your inventory output much as a retailer will, manage to some extent some of your listings on an Amazon-like platform, handle breaking items down and fulfilling them on the individualized basis that the end consumer needs. There's a platform that we speak about a lot that's focused on kind of the health and beauty space, PharmaPacks, that has had some successful partnerships in the past. It drives tremendous throughput, incremental sales for a number of brands in that space. And I definitely do see for many suppliers the benefits of looking to a partner to help you launch as a 3P versus doing it all yourself. Let's see here. When you sell through a 3P platform, who's the owner of the customer information, history, etc.? This is an excellent question. So if you launch on, if you have, Tmall listings, if you have Amazon listings, yes, those marketplace platforms, they are completely in control of and have complete access to all of the shopper data. But for Amazon, for instance, the 3P seller does have access to some unique tools within their kind of Seller Central toolkit that the vendor does not have access to. And they do get a greater visibility into the end consumer. 3P sellers on Amazon, to some extent, are able to do things like retargeting consumers, soliciting reviews after a sale. They get greater visibility into the consumer data. So I guess my answer is partially. You gain greater data presence, greater ownership as a supplier, but I want to caveat that with the marketplace still does own and have the deepest insights on the data sets that are being collected for the sales, even on their 3P marketplace. All right. Someone asked, how likely will it be that we see up to half of all major retailers jump on large platforms like Amazon, JD, Alibaba? I think it depends on the example there. So I think Amazon, I would put a little bit outside that. I think for a lot of Western retailers launching on Tmall, yes, if you want to access that Chinese market, it's a really scaled, easy way to do that. So I think you're going to see a higher proportion of retailers opting to do that, if they even are strategically emphasizing China as a market long term. Amazon, I actually expect a little bit more of kind of a competitive environment, so a little bit less, probably a little bit more of a selective listing environment. I think the key element to understand here for most retailers in the online environment is if there's only going to be a few key players that win out in the long term, these ones that can generate this flywheel effect, getting tremendous scale. So there's only going to be a few players that are really Amazons, Alibabas of the world that have this vast, endless aisle assortment, are super convenient destinations for shoppers to basically shop for everything. But that isn't to say that they aren't the only e-commerce platforms that will succeed long term. You can have a differentiated online platform through things like unique assortment that the shopper can't find on Amazon.com, an interesting shopping experience that's highly informative, programs like, if you have a store-based presence, click and collect, which Amazon frankly is investing heavily in gaining a greater store-based presence, doing things like acquiring Whole Foods, but can't match some of the store networks that some of these retailers have in offering programs like click and collect at this stage in the game. So this isn't to say that the online landscape is going to be empty of anything but marketplaces. It is to say that you need to either be differentiated and somehow be a destination for consumers for some reason, or the marketplace platform is going to compete you away. All right, so with that, we're a little bit over time. I want to thank everyone for joining the call. If there's any additional questions, I'll be sure to reach out. Again, my email is on the screen. Feel free to reach out individually to me with any questions you have today. Thank you for joining me on our call about winning with 3P marketplaces, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. Thanks.